Yep. We're talking about eggs today and maybe the big egg conspiracy, but it might not be the egg conspiracy that you think. Yes, I've seen the videos about the big egg conspiracy. They're running up prices with bird flu, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, if you're into that, this is probably not the best video for it, but we're into a bigger egg conspiracy. And believe it or not, there really is a bigger one. And it's been going on for decades. And that conspiracy is eggs cause heart attacks. I remember this was, gosh, I was 30 years old. We were traveling in Germany and we were staying in a youth hostel. Maybe I was in my 20s. I remember they only gave me one egg. And they were giving other people other eggs, more eggs. And so I said, could I have another egg, please? And the lady serving eggs said, no, I'm sorry, I can't. I said, why? And she pointed over to this really large German lady that ran the place. So I walked over to this large lady and I said, why can't I have another egg? And she said, you wasted egg. Here's why she said that. I had poured these were soft boiled eggs, and I had poured the egg yolk out. And I told her it was for health reasons. So at the end of the day, I had been duped too. What, 30, 40 years ago, I felt like egg whites were okay, but not egg yolks. Well, I tell you what, the science, the evidence has changed. It's changed in a very, very big way. So we're going to talk about that today. This is one of Dr. J's favorite topics, eggs. Maybe his other favorite topic is don't eat cereal, especially breakfast cereal. We got to ask Dr. J today, why has he got such a big thing about breakfast? But another thing to be aware of is this. You've heard about our metabolic risk assessment program, our kit. We talked about it last week and maybe a little bit the week before. At this point in time, we're getting to where we think we can offer some for free. So if our regular services, our full medical services have been too expensive for you, but you want to get to go a little bit deeper in terms of understanding your metabolic health or risk, or that of your loved ones, stick around. We'll talk about how that can get done. Dr. J, you want to join me today?
Absolutely. So first, I think there's one important thing to mention that you didn't. And we're covering an article today about how eggs are actually linked to living longer, or better said, less cardiovascular risk and all-cause death. So the big thing is you started thinking about eggs, high cholesterol, heart attacks, and now it's more like if you're eating eggs, you are very likely to live longer. That's what the article is about today.
So
And
it's
nutrients
not
on
just
eggs. Yeah.
it's not just that eggs are not bad for you. It's that eggs are actually good. And you don't really have to eat that many of them to do that.
Yeah. And and with the eggs so expensive in the US, it's a good thing to also know that you don't need to eat that much either. It doesn't have to break your wallet that much to get the benefits of eggs. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. Before we do, I have a new dynamic for you guys. Dr. Brewer mentioned us giving away one of the metabolic hits that you see here that will help identify what's your metabolic risk at home. So this is the dynamic. This is how it goes. If you are a YouTube member, you're going to have the prime option to start with this. So you need to be a YouTube member. And the first YouTube member who answers this riddle is going to get the box. All right. So that's how it goes. I'm going to read it for you. Yeah, please read it for us.
The Jesus's riddle, Dr. J's riddle. My name's quite tricky, but don't you fret. I guard your eyes so you don't regret. With my partner, I make a great team to keep your vision sharp and keen.
All right. And the
Now,
answer is going to be within the video. So if you don't know the answer now, we're going to discuss it within the video. So it has to do with eggs, of course. And before the Q&A, we're going to give you the answer, who is the lucky winner. Okay. So let's get started then. This is the article. It was published last month. Egg Consumption and Mortality, a prospective cohort study of Australian community dwelling older adults. It's really, really interesting because this was a specific study conducted on people over 70 years old. And they wanted to see, of those who are over 70 years old, depending on how much eggs they were eating, who was dying more. So they included about 8,000 adults. They followed them up to 6 years in average. And see here, those who eat eggs weekly showed 29% less cardiovascular mortality risk and 17% less all-cause mortality. So
that's a big deal. When you can actually impact all-cause mortality, you know, they get into these things about different things that maybe it doesn't, maybe it really, like statins. They talk about, well, statins don't decrease all-cause mortality. It's hard for something even as big as cardiovascular disease, #1 cause of death, but it's still less than a third of all deaths. So when something impacts all-cause mortality, that's a really, really big deal.
Yes, and you might wanna move to your left a little bit, just one step to your left on your dungeon, so we can see you better. Perfect.
You know, I've got a new light problem. As you know, we did some changes in the studio, and I'm a little bit stuck right now, but I'll fix it.
All right. Yeah. Just make sure that your chains don't do too much noise. So 1 to 6 eggs a week. That's what the study found. The study said, yeah, with 1 to 6 eggs a week, you get this benefit. And that's the whole point. A lot of people like to eat more than that. I personally eat 2 or more eggs a day. But even, at least based on this study, if you just eat 1 to 6 eggs a week, you're going to get some of those benefits. Of course, as a lot of studies that involve specific foods, this is not a perfect study by any means. A lot of the data was gathered with surveys, and it's more like a cohort. So they have a group of people, and they were checking on them and see what happened, try to do some statistic adjustments to see the results. So we know that there are limitations on the study. Nevertheless, the results actually fit some other studies that we showed previously. Actually, last year we did a show on eggs, and we showed something similar where they said 1 to 6 eggs a week. So that also had the same impact. So Dr. Brewer, what I want to talk about why eggs might be probably helping you live longer. What's on eggs that it's so good?
Well, they got a lot of nutrients that people just don't think about. They think about, well, and back when, you know, I told my story about the 20s where I was at Hopkins.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened. I think, not sure what happened. Anyway, I was telling the story about the impact on health. That was back in the days when I was training at Hopkins, and those were the low-fat days. Those were the days where we said, hey, be careful about the saturated fat in egg yolks. And the story even then was that egg whites were very healthy. They were mostly protein. But one thing that we have not, we did not appreciate back in those old dark ages of 30 years ago, that we appreciate much more now, is the role of healthy fats. And one of the role of healthy fats is to provide a place for fat soluble vitamins. Vitamin D, as you notice down on the bottom part of your list, there is a fat soluble vitamin, and it's very, very important. You look at other things up at the top: choline, lutein, zeaxanthin, the omega-3 fatty acids, leucine, biotin, selenium, vitamin A, the B complex, phospholipids. All of these things are very important. Phospholipids, for example, being very important in terms of the structure of your cells. We're all made of cells, and the structure needs to be rigid and robust.
Fantastic. So if you paid attention, Dr. Brewer mentioned one of those nutrients, and one of those nutrients on this list is pretty much associated with reduction on eye damage and macular degeneration. It actually comes in couples. So there you go. I give you all I could help to help you out. And I'm sorry I didn't mention, for now we can only ship the product to US. So if you're in the US, you are able to participate here. If
We've
you're
had
non-member,
questions about shipping it in Europe. The goal is to get there, to be able to ship it to Europe. We've had a couple of questions about shipping it to Australia and the Middle East. Yes, we're working on it, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and if one of the members of the channel doesn't get the answer, we're gonna go to anyone who's not a YouTube member if they get the answer first. So I'll skim through the comments. So, but before we move on, there's a lot to discuss about eggs. So I know you wanted to mention this. So eggs are very, very high in prices. Bird flu is a big issue right now. And even though the evidence suggests that as long as you cook your eggs properly, even if they are infected, if you cook them properly, the risk of infection is very, very low.
You're not suggesting we go out and buy some infected eggs.
I'm not saying to do that. What I'm saying is, if you look for that, they said the problem is raw eggs. That even if you eat raw eggs, they might have some salmonella, and you might not know. The problem is eating them raw. But still, of course, like on a public health perspective, I do agree that you have to be careful with that, because you don't want an outbreak, and you don't want to risk it, even if the risk is very low. But what do you think? Do you think this is a big conspiracy trying to
good question. I've seen
control population? Yeah,
I've seen and heard some of the videos about, oh my gosh, this is another conspiracy back like COVID. I don't know. I know there's a lot of fear, but I think your point about don't throw away your eggs. Don't think that eggs are unsafe. Eggs are very, very safe. And when you cook them, they're just a whole lot safer. And it's like, I'm not worried about infectious diseases coming from a cooked egg.
Yep. And of course, if you can get free range chicken that are not corn fed, how do you call them? Like, there's specific phrase for that.
Corn fed is for cattle. And
I know it's free range chickens.
Free range chickens, yeah, or cage free chickens.
Cage free chickens, exactly. All right, of course, those are better. And on that old video we covered about eggs, we went through a lot of studies and other stuff about how good it is to eat eggs. But now, just for the
you're having some
connection. Crazy doctors promoting eating eggs. Everybody knows eggs are going to raise your cholesterol. What do you think about that?
Well, that was my misperception way back in the days when I was getting rid of that. I was in that German youth hostel, getting rid of the yolk. We were worried about the cholesterol in eggs, and that, like many other things, was wrong. That was not an issue. I mean, it's become, there's still people. One thing that's very surprising is that there are still people that worry about the cholesterol in eggs. And, it sounded logical. So many things in health science sound logical, so everybody believes them. And then when everybody believes them, more content creators put out more information on them. and it just becomes, quote, common knowledge. And sometimes common knowledge is not correct. One of the first chinks in the wall for, oh, the cholesterol in eggs will hurt you was the logic. I mean, it wasn't that big of a discovery, but it was like, hey, wait a minute. Somebody sort of perked up and said, hey, wait a minute. Do you know that our body actually makes many times the amount of cholesterol that you get when you eat an egg? And so then people started thinking, they started looking, and yes. So then the theories changed, and then research started pushing on that issue, and research has been pretty clear, as you see with, you know, the study that you presented earlier in the show this morning. Eggs don't hurt you.
That's unless if you're allergic to egg protein. Well, then yes, if you're allergic, you should not be eating eggs. That's just you're just born with a handicap against you. Other than that, it's a great option. And
in
like
fact,
with
one of the things that I think happens is that there's, like maybe with the study that you presented, but more often with some of the more cardiovascular studies, I think one of the things about eggs is the protective factor. And it's not quite so much that the egg is actively protecting you as it is that it's a bioindicator or an indicator, behavioral indicator, that you're not eating the other favorite breakfast food that you love to hate on. If you're eating eggs, you're probably not eating a lot of cereal.
exactly, and well, that comes with the ideology. I presented this idea of the eggs to some people who don't follow the channel. They saw the image of the eggs and they were like, "Oh, when I see the eggs, I immediately think about cholesterol." And they immediately think that whole grains is the best thing they could eat for their cholesterol and for their heart health.
Oh.
And that there's a problem with that. And the problem is most people are not eating a healthy option for grains, which you can find some as long as your blood glucose doesn't raise up to 200. But they are avoiding eggs. So it makes sense what you're saying. On this study, it's very likely that people who are eating eggs are actually having a more healthy lifestyle, and that's where the impact comes as well. So I agree 100%. Yeah.
You couldn't be more right. You know, so many of the same people that say eggs are bad for you because of cholesterol turn around and say, I'm healthy because I'm eating whole wheat toast.
Or Cheerios.
And with nut and honey Cheerios.
Honey nuts,
Cheerios. Yeah. And both of those are really, really bad for you. The glycemic value on those, the amount that they raise your blood sugar is just devastating.
Yep. And it goes back to what's the number one cause of heart attacks and strokes? It's not cholesterol. It has to do with metabolic disease, problems metabolizing carbohydrates. Now, there's a problem, though, with eggs and with meat and with animal products overall, and it's where did you get those? Because it's a lot of trusting companies who are selling that for you, about trusting how, if you buy at the local market, trusting on how the person is managing their cattle and what are they feeding them. Unless you have a place where you're producing your own food and you're sure that your soil is not contaminated, we are always exposed to different things. So the only thing we can do is try to get the best sources as possible. And
that's similar to some of the stuff that we've started to see with supplements. People talk about with plant-based food, organic, quote, organically grown. And as you start digging into that, organic's easier to put on the label than it is to actually make happen. Same thing with chickens. It's easier to put cage-free or free range than it is to actually make sure that that's what happened in terms of your
pasture raised. That's the word I was looking for. Pasture raised.
In terms of your sources. And we're starting to find that with supplements as well. One of the supplements I used to use was sourced in China, and now I'm finding not so good. So we're getting deeper in terms of our own restrictions regarding our sourcing for supplements that we agree to.
I told you, you need to go visit wherever they are making that stuff before endorsing any supplements.
And it probably won't be China.
Yeah. All right. So one more thing about eggs, and then let's move on to questions and answers. Best way to cook eggs to get the benefits from them. We covered that on the last show. Boiled eggs. Boiled eggs is the best option. I am on the minority, but I'm gonna die on that hill. Cold boiled eggs. I personally don't like them. Dr. Brewer likes to get one of those from the fridge and just eat them like that. I prefer them recently cooked. But if you like them cold, that's fine. I don't think temperature is gonna damage that much. But that's the best way to eat eggs to really have more chances to absorb the nutrients. Boiled eggs.
You know, I've seen two men this week so already, older men who have a slightly low hemoglobin hematocrit. With men, you tend to get a little bit lower hemoglobin hematocrit. Sometimes it's iron related. Usually, it's more decrease in testosterone. But iron is a big issue, especially as you start aging. And one of the simple ways to get iron is to cook your eggs in an iron skillet. It's actually one of the most effective. People want to supplement with iron, and your body just can't absorb it very well.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I didn't know that. I just eat liver. That's what I get my
Oh,
iron
liver's a
from.
good source, no question.
Yep, that's what I like. I'm the only one at home that likes eating liver, though, but that's fine.
You know, you work me too hard, but I still take Tuesday mornings off to have breakfast with some old high school buddies of mine, and I'll often get chicken livers there at the
Oh yeah,
beacon.
you told me that. Yeah, I prefer beef liver, but that's just preference. I think both are really good. Look at you. You're all a carnivore guy now. Why aren't you talking about vegetable sources for iron, like garbanzo beans or beans?
That's a good point. Really good point.
Are you also against lectins and oxalates and all that stuff?
Well, I will say this, and I've always said this. People think that lectins, you know, Stephen Gundry gets beat up a lot, and he sometimes is a little. Sometimes he deserves it, but lectins are actually a big deal. They are real. They're not nearly as big a deal as Dr. Gundry tends to make in a lot of his content, but they are a big deal, and they do exist. One of the most common lectins, I'm blanking on it right now.
Phytic acid.
You see it in grain products.
I thought you were talking about phytic acid, but I'm not sure.
No, I'll think about it in a few minutes. But yeah, the lectins are real. The issue though is, should you do away with lectins entirely? No, you know, you can say some of the things that you find in Brussels sprouts, for example, are lectins and can cause bloating. You need to cook them differently, and you need to be aware of lectins. And that's not a reason to say I'm never going to eat plant-based foods again.
Yeah. Are you thinking about ricin?
No, I'll find it in a minute.
All right.
It's my, you know, a senior moment kind of thing. It's glutens and gliadins.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You know, the a lot of people talk about, well, I have a gluten sensitivity, and a lot of people that don't even know it. Glutens go along with grains, and so there are two reasons to just go ahead and avoid grains for the most part, whether they're full whole grains or not.
Well, let me put you on the spot then. What's better, eggs or avocados?
And I mean, why would I have to make a choice, one or the other, on those?
Well,
I think
just
eggs and avocados are a wonderful breakfast. They're a wonderful lunch. They're also a really good dinner.
That's what I'm saying.
You can let eggs take over your dinner, just not Tony the Tiger.
You just can't take a stand. You have to say it depends all the time.
Oh, you're always trying to pigeonhole me. That's the problem.
All right.
You want me to eat one food.
So let's if there's nothing else that we can add to the X conversation for now, let's go to Q&A. And if there's something else on X that we haven't discussed that you want us to discuss or you want to ask us, hit us on the chat. We'll talk about X even more. Bottom line, we are pro X, and there's no doubt about it. They're an excellent source of food, right?
Yep.
Okay, of nutrients. So let me find the winner of this first riddle that we hope to be doing very often. So I said I'm going to prioritize members, so I apologize for that. I have seen some people saying, oh, if you keep that member only stuff, I'm going to unsubscribe. I'm sorry. I'm trying to have some order and to provide some benefits to those people who are supporting the channel a little bit more. And
there's another issue as well. We do get a little bit technical. We don't shy away from the science, and we do that on our live show. So we have folks that have seen a lot more of our stuff, and we don't shy away from the technical stuff quite so much here.
Yep. So MAR, lutein and zeaxanthin. That's the answer to the riddle that we started the show with. Thank you so much. So this is what you need to do, Mar. Remember, the condition is that you need to be on the US. If you're not in the US, we're not going to be able to honor our word. We're going to have to find a second person. So Mar, please call the office at the end of the show, 859-721-1414. Gilbert, if you can put the number on the screen. So at the end of the show, I would contact the office. You can ask for Tracy. We'll give your handle in there, and we'll get all the information we need so we can ship the box for you. This is what you will get on the box. You get a grip strength dynamometer to measure that. All the kits you need to do an oral glucose tolerance test. All the tools you need to get more as close as possible body fat measurement and analysis, instructions, and an online portal access. And you also will have a consultation with the team to discuss the results and help you set up a plan of what to do to fix if you have any metabolic risk according to the box. If you didn't win, don't worry. We are planning to do this every week. We have a debut price for the box, $169.50. And if you buy additional boxes, each box is going to cost you $119.99. We have a link as well on the bottom. And Gilbert, if you can show the banner, if you want to use the QR code or just go to the website, you can also get it. One of the first things Dr. Brewer realized when he was on his journey to reverse his own plaque was identifying that he had metabolic disease. And this is, if you don't want to go to the lab, you can do this at home directly with this. So end of the plug. Let's go to Q&A.
We're going to do our water ball. Did that water ball. I paid $35 for it.
Yep. So we got some feedback. So again, congratulations to Mar. And if you want to become a member and have the opportunity, just like Mar had, do what T Mark over here and what Linda Harrington just did. Click the join button. You can go to the main website, main screen of the channel, or next to the subscribe button, you will find that there. So that's an option. Let's go to answer some questions. And thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying the show. We're trying to turn this into more like a radio podcast where you see us just discussing different topics and going here and there. If this isn't your style of how you like to receive information, we have a show every Saturday. That's more direct, more YouTube-y style. So MAR.
While you're looking for stuff, I do want to make the comment. Somebody brought up heme-related iron. Great source. Yeah, in other words, animal sources of iron is a very, very good source.
Yep. And I saw somebody in one comment on the video saying, oh, don't drink tea because tea will inhibit iron absorption. And I mean, That's fine. I have never seen tea-related cases of anemia. I have never seen
Point.
tea impacting that much. I mean, it's fine if you don't want to drink tea, but there's some teas that might have some benefits, unless you want to avoid the caffeine and you want to avoid the microplastics on those bags that come with the tea. That also is a problem. But I mean, it depends. I will get some natural tea here and there directly from the source. Dr. V, I had mild carotid plaque or mild plaque on the carotid right bulb. Calcium score 989. Should I have mild soft plaque in coronary 2? And it's on this. I assume he or she is mentioning lifestyle. So we cannot provide medical advice. But what do you think? If you do have some mild plaque, I'm not sure if that's soft plaque or it's just a small amounts of plaque on the carotid. What are the chances for you to have some plaque on your heart?
So, number one, if you have plaque in your carotids, the probability that you'll have plaque in your coronary arteries is about 98%. So, yes, probably. The other question is, if you had a calcium score, the question is, I mean, how did you get that calcium score? If you knew it was in the carotid right bulb, that sounds like you had a CIMT. So the question is, if you had a CIMT, why did they not give you clarity on whether or not you have a soft plaque? You know, all of this stuff, it brings up a point, and I see our folks do it sometimes too. They get too wrapped up in, oh, well, do a CT angiogram because it is definitive. And there's no question, CT angiograms are far more definitive. But the things about worrying about garbage in, garbage out on a carotid artery CIMT, there is no garbage in, garbage out on the calcium, whether or not it's a soft plaque, which has no calcium, or a stable plaque. So I'm left confused with the question.
But I think just the question at the end is, if you have plaque in your neck, could you have plaque in your heart? And the answer is yes.
Oh, yeah.
Would that be soft plaque? Very likely.
Okay. So if that's what the question is, yeah, 98% probability.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, a lot of people, after they start looking at this, start to realize, oh, wait a minute. If I have soft plaque in my bulb and I'm worried about my heart, soft plaque in the bulb can cause strokes. So strokes are even uglier than heart attacks in many cases.
Yep. All right. Joe SXM, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday to you. This is more related to the last week topic. I think he arrived late to the show. He got here late. Cut back on water with 9 p.m. pills as recommended, and it helped me not wake up as much at night. That's great. Glad to hear that. Sometimes are those small changes, small tweaks that make a big, big difference. Soy girl, giving it a chance. Vitamin A and the Jolt. Yes, vitamin A can help with the eyes, but the riddle had 2 components. But it's a good guess. So that's that. I think eggs is one of those foods that has a lot of micronutrients and other properties compared to other foods. Phil Morgan, hello from Denver, Boulder. Hello. Phil Morgan, do you encourage backyard chickens? My city allows them. Do you have chickens on your yard?
Me?
Yep.
I do not. But my niece has chickens.
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
She has problems though, because she's got raccoons and possums, both who like the chickens more than she does. And so she's got to protect them from that. And she's also got some hawks there too. So she's constantly having to fight the hawks, the possums, and the raccoons to protect those chickens. I've had a lot of her chicken's eggs, her hen's eggs. They're really good.
Do you have those possums over there that just will go there and eat just the head of the chicken, leave the body?
No, I don't.
We have some of those over here. anyone who raises chickens over here, they know that there's a specific I think it's just a Mexican thing then, and a specific type of possum that will do that. They just eat the head and leave the
Eat the
body.
head. That
Yep.
sounds like a bad hombre possum to me.
You better close your borders. Phil Morgan, us too. He was answering a question, not sure. But yeah, I mean, if you can raise your own chickens, that's fine. I think that's probably the best way to do it. It's not easy though. Did they assess the way eggs were cooked? Does it matter? Yes, as we mentioned, the study didn't specify.
Not that stuff.
Other studies have shown that boiling eggs is probably a bit better. I think the next best option was somewhere between sunny side up or omelettes, depending on what micronutrient do you want to absorb. Yep. Okay. Do you encourage cooking the eggs in coconut oil for the C8 MCT medium chain? Is
I
that
never
medium
thought
chain?
about that,
Yeah.
but that's not a bad idea.
I just do butter, but I don't think cooking in coconut oil is a big issue. It turns out that this leads us to the conversation about saturated fats. And the one thing that saturated fats have in favor against polyunsaturated fats is that their chains are more stable. So when you cook them, they're not gonna break, or they're not gonna change compared to polyunsaturated fats. When, like, all those other types of seed oils, when you cook them, the chain just adjusts and it can become trans fats. And trans fats are probably one of the worst things that you can be eating. I'll be more concerned about trans fats than I will be from just cholesterol alone. So that's the problem when you cook stuff like that.
We can't have that topic come up and me not put in a plug for my friend Nina Teichholz's book, The Big Fat Surprise. If you haven't read it, you should.
Yep. And evidence is piling up. We're not denying the evidence that's showing association between LDL and heart disease. And then you go into deeper conversations on the Mendelian randomization studies that are quote unquote proving causation between LDL and cardiovascular disease. But we also had a conversation with our friends Nick Norwitz and Adrian Soto. Adrian Soto being a really good statistician, or a doctor, a specialty on statistics and research. And he was telling that there are big flaws on Mendelian randomization. Even if the idea seems really good, the execution is really hard. It might be frustrating, but proving causation, it's really hard.
I'll tell you, one thing that frustrated me was I read those Mendelian randomization studies, or MR studies, and I was saying they weren't that good either. But you didn't listen to me.
I didn't believe you until Adrian came and told me.
As usual.
I needed to see them too. I needed to analyze them as well, because of course I don't want to be in a position to say I was wrong. We're gonna say we're wrong if we are, but before saying something, I will always double check. And I can get on the nerves of Dr. Brewer for not believing him at first sight, but I think that's also healthy.
You wear me out. Yeah. It may be healthy, but it wears me out. You know, the other thing about that, and I hate to say it, I'm not going to throw aspersions, but maybe I will. I get the impression that the people that love to quote and say, and the Mendelian randomization studies prove it. A, no, they don't. B, I'm not so sure that the people that keep saying that have really understand those MR studies that well. I think partially because they don't understand them, they make assumptions that they're a lot more powerful than they really are.
Mm-hmm. And every research has flaws. And that's why you get so much conflicting information, because it's hard to find 2 studies, nevertheless 10 studies that will use the same methodology, they will use the same procedure, and will get to the same results. There's always undefinitive amount of variables involved. So to get a conclusion in science, it's hard, really hard. And then you put on the consideration that everybody's different. So you and I can eat the same amount of eggs, can eat exactly the same, and I bet that our metabolisms are going to respond differently.
No question.
Our results are going to be different.
No question.
All right. G. Fulton, agreed. Boiled eggs. Plus, it's easier to separate the yolk from the white when it's boiled, and you want to focus on the multivitamin on the center. 18 yolks this week.
This week.
Fantastic.
You, G. Fulton.
All right. Jan Johnson, I raise chickens, meat and layer. Free ranging is key to avoid so much grain. Salmonella. Perfect. That's what we're saying. Unless you have a ranch somewhere where you can manage your own food sources, there's a lot of trusting and reading labels and making sure, or going to your local market, and also trusting that what is in there that is not packaged is actually safe for you. So that's just the reality. Have you checked out this product, Arterosil? Oh, the Arterosil rant is coming.
I'm not going
Arterosil, a sea mass with blend fruit and veggies, targets endothelial glycocalyx regeneration.
I will say this. Somebody asked me about that. I think it was yesterday. And the reality is, no, I haven't. I was surprised that the evidence was better than I expected out of Arterosil. But then there were some things that happened. I think the original founder of Arterosil got bought out and then took off and tried to create a competing product. I've continued to focus more on lifestyle.
I'm going to give you an example of why it's hard to trust products like this. Even with supplements, you get some of that problem. When the pharmaceutical company develops a drug and they put it on the market, when a drug comes out on the market, a new drug, years of research have passed by. And you can discuss that there is corruption or whatever influence. I can say that there isn't. I don't know. But there is research behind that. Even if that part of that research might be a little bit biased, but at least they have tested that on humans. The problem that I saw personally with Arterosil is it's not a cheap supplement. It's not a cheap product. And even though some of the research is good, looks good, most of that is still on in vitro, on test tubes, or in mice. So, and there's a big leap between something that works in mice in order for that to work in humans. And a lot of medications, a lot of supplements, a lot of products will not pass that test. And so the marketers will promise, they will tell you, this is the best thing you can do. This is the best product. It's going to clean your arteries. If it doesn't have side effects, which we don't know because there are not enough studies on humans, but if there are not side effects, I mean, everybody can spend their money the way they want. Placebo effect is also a thing, right?
So one of the things you brought up is, it sounded like you were saying there was lack of data in the supplements area, and there was no conspiracy in the medications area. And
I mean, there are conspiracies. I don't know for sure. I won't be surprised.
Pharmacies like, and pardon me if you're Persian, but it's one of the terms that I've grown up with. Pharmacies like a Persian rug market, where, my cost is $1, but for you, my friend, I'll sell it to you for $20, kind of thing.
Oh, that's for sure. They need money. I mean,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. The big pharma is so poor.
Oh yeah, they just make roughly billions of dollars every year, right?
Right. But to your point, the quality control and the control over input of ingredients and the oversight is better in the prescription drugs. Now, the other point that I would agree with that you said is Arterosil is expensive, and so I've focused, as you know, on lifestyle, some place for supplements, and just some place for prescription meds. One of your favorite topics was brought up just a minute ago. It's not a member, but it's a good point. Duck eggs versus chicken eggs. What do you think, Jesus? Dr.
I think duck eggs were slightly better
They are.
than chicken eggs. It's just because they're bigger and they have more nutrients in quantity. But I didn't remember seeing like a huge significant difference. If there's a problem finding duck eggs, I think chicken eggs are fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's the practical part of it. Yeah, duck eggs may theoretically be better, but where are you going to get them?
yeah. All right. And the last thing I want to say about supplements, I know that there are pharmaceutical companies that are owning some supplement companies. So if you think that for taking supplements you are avoiding big pharma, you might want to take twice.
That's a good point. Very good point.
John Pollum, our friend John Pollum, thank you so much. This is an excellent live stream. You're both experts that I trust. It's nice to see you coming out of your shell a bit, Dr. Brewer. We didn't have enough egg jokes.
I know we didn't know egg jokes today. I'm so glad John not only gave us a $5 tip, he brought some egg humor into the thing here.
Yep. Fantastic. Let me see. I think I jumped a question that I needed to see here. Jan Johnson, have raised layers for years. Free roaming is key to feed them less grain. My understanding is that the salmonella is in the unwashed shell. Correct.
So I'm a big fan of a thing called Kiva. It's a microfinance. And the other one is, oh gosh, what's the other one? The Heifer Project. And
this is not financial advice.
That's right. This is not financial advice. I've not made money back from either of those. They're not investments, they're charities. But they're a charity which there is microfinance. And one of the big things there is chickens are great for a microfinance for a poor space. It's a great way to get food, both from eggs and from chicken meat. So I think we just don't have enough chickens in this world.
Correct. This is a great question. I'm anxious to hear your perspective. Ruben O. Many peer-reviewed papers suggest that saturated fat promotes insulin resistance. What's your take on this?
Yes, there are a ton of peer-reviewed papers that have been interpreted by their authors to say exactly that. But Ruben, what I would challenge you to do is go back and see where there was carbohydrate restriction. So, and why do I ask that question? Let me go back and quote a fellow we had on our channel. Whether you like him or not, I agree with a whole lot of stuff that he said, Robert Lustig. And one of the things he said is you can do great on a diet ranging all the way from carnivore over to vegan, carnivore, keto, low carb, vegetarian, vegan. But the one diet you cannot do well on is what? Standard American diet. And that's what you're describing here, or that's what the control is, Ruben, on those studies. They're saying, okay, if you have a standard American diet, and here's the key to that, not only processed food, but highly processed carbs plus fats versus taking the saturated fat out of it, you're actually going to do better in that second diet. And you can do all the peer reviews you want, you can do all the studies you want, and it will continue to show that. Does that mean that saturated fat is the problem? No. Again, it's that combination, the standard American diet. And why is that the problem? Because most people don't really, most people don't study insulin at all. Of those that do, even they, and for example, most doctors don't understand the three mechanisms of insulin. The first is that, yes, it moves blood sugar out of the blood and it stimulates the insulin receptors, which pulls that sugar out of the blood. The second one is related to this. It wants you to burn your carbs. That's what insulin, if you think of insulin as wanting to get carbs or sugar out out of your blood, then the one thing it's going to do is slow down your fat burning. So that's one of the big problems that happens as we get insulin resistant. Our insulin rates go up, and then we cannot burn fat. I'm not going to say what the third mechanism of insulin is. It has to do with Alzheimer's, but that's all I'm going to leave, just that little hint. Back to Ruben's question. So yes, there are plenty of studies that are out there, Ruben, where again, the combination, the control is standard American diet versus taking that saturated fat out. If that's your comparison, the taking the fat out is going to work better. But it's not going to work better than an appropriate low carb diet or keto diet or carnivore or vegan low carb, you name it.
Yep. And I think this is what has been happening in the last decades, right? We are blaming on saturated fats a problem that is coming from eating foods that are processed and they have both a lot of trans fats, saturated fats, and carbohydrates. I'm going to give an unpopular opinion. A lot of our audience, or the core audience, will say you can eat as much saturated fat as you want. I'm not sure. I do think that there's a lot of something, that you can eat a lot of something and doesn't necessarily make it good. You can even get toxicity from oxygen. If you get 100% oxygen, you're going to get toxicity, and you need oxygen to live. However, I do agree with you when you say saturated fats are not as bad as we have been thought that we haven't said that they are. And that's why we are okay with ketovore and carnivore diets, because they do work and they have benefits. The other part is, what happens when somebody eats a lot of saturated fats, they're on a ketovore and carnivore diet? How much carbohydrates are they eating? Not much. And what's going to happen with that insulin? It's going to go down.
Go way down.
And what's going to happen when you go back to carbohydrates? You are very likely to have a spike on insulin. But that's not just because you have stopped eating carbohydrates. It's just that you do have a metabolic issue that you have been building up for decades when you're eating a lot of processed grains and other carbs that are unhealthy. It's not an easy subject, and I think there's a lot of discussions and nuance to be made, and everybody's going to respond differently. Renato Becerra dos Reis, thank you so much for becoming a member. It goes a long, long way. That's for sure. We have a lot of really good questions and comments. Joe, eggs might be a problem if you are a cholesterol hyperabsorber and population. I had oversized response to 10 milligrams ezetimibe, 107 to 43 LDL, 2 eggs a day for me. Like we just said, there's nuance. What do you think about that?
Me?
Too much cholesterol on the
gut. Yeah, and even for a hyperabsorber, Joe, you may be one, and they do exist. But even for the hyperabsorbers, I really still have a question in my mind about just how much that is causing a problem, a medical problem. Once you get deeper in terms of looking at the quote cholesterol particles, it's not the cholesterol particles that are the problem. And even the other side of this debate is beginning to acknowledge that. I've seen several comments and questions about ApoB. The difference between ApoB and LDL is IDL, VLDL, and chylomicron remnant. I'm not gonna repeat those. I'm not gonna go deeper into that, other than to say that the difference between those and LDL is that they're full of triglycerides. So it's triglyceride that's the problem here, much, much more so than cholesterol. Yep. And we're getting close to Jesus's 60-minute mark when we turn into pumpkins. So I'm not going to go any deeper in that cholesterol versus saturated fat.
And I'm not going to tell you you can't, because I'm going to get backlash if I don't let you talk as much as you want. So that's why I'm letting you talk. Continue your teachings, because they're good. So you're fine. I just want to mention something. 10 milligrams of ezetimibe. That's again, just bear with me. It's a great drug if you want to decrease your LDL cholesterol, and that's why it's being used. And we have been okay using that on patients. On my own, I have patients that are concerned about LDL. They're willing to use that. The problem is it will also lower HDL. So you have to be aware of that. And it has some anti-inflammatory properties, but not as good as other medications. So that's the thing with ezetimibe. Yep. Although I'll say, I don't know, do you agree with that? I think ezetimibe probably has a better impact on LDL than statins.
I haven't used enough ezetimibe to have a strong opinion on that. I don't like ezetimibe.
That's okay. And of course, this is not saying that we are all about medications. We do recommend lifestyle first. And some people say, hey, what do you think about this medication? Well, these are the upsides, these are the downsides. Make your own choices. Linda Harrington, isn't imported produce, organic or not, sprayed with pesticides before crossing borders? Isn't grocery store products, organic or not, sprayed in the store with pesticides? Lastly, kit Medicare coverage. The kit is not covered by Medicare. We had our own thing with Medicare for years. It's a big issue. I'm not sure they. What's that?
I said, did you see the arrows in my back? We tried Medicare, and I did a lot of my career in Medicare, helped Medicare Advantage programs. I was the chief science officer for one of the largest Medicare Advantage programs, but it just wasn't ready for us. Bottom line, we lost money on every Medicare patient that we saw.
Yep. I don't know about this. Do you know? This is the first time I hear that stuff is being sprayed with pesticides at the store. And I'm not sure about that because there are regulations, at least in Mexico, there are regulations to manage that kind of chemicals. And I don't think the stores want to go through that conundrum.
It's interesting. I'm trying to remember where we saw that. I think that was in one of the cereal videos. In one of your videos too. It was clear that there were some regulations that were better in Mexico than the U.S. for warnings about food components.
Yeah,
but I don't know this either. I think that's a really good question. I wouldn't be surprised at all to find if there were pesticides involved in crossing the borders.
Yeah, and that's the danger that you're gonna get. Like they serve a purpose. Pesticides do serve a purpose, but still there are chemicals that it's known to have effects on metabolism. So yeah, that's the world we're living in. As I said, unless you raise your own food, there's no real certain way to know, or that the guy who's providing the foods for you, your producer.
Jesus, I know you're mostly focused on channel members, but I have to tell Antique Action Figure, I will suggest that to my niece. Possum omelet.
What's that?
Yeah, sounds good, doesn't it?
All right. Well, I think that's the show for today. Thank you so much for your patience. Don't hate on me for focusing on members only. That's the way we try to do, because there's always a lot of questions that we cannot get to. And Dr. Brewer, as good as a person is, he tries to get some of non-members' questions and answer them. We're just trying to make this a little bit more efficient, and really appreciate your patience. And if there's anything else that we didn't discuss about X, leave us a comment. We'll be happy to cover that on a future video. Any closing remarks? You have 50 seconds.
Yes, we actually had a movie star make a comment to us, Ron Burgundy, and he said, thank you so much. He really enjoys our show, and he thanked us for providing information to citizen scientists.
Fantastic. If he becomes a member, I will answer his questions first.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. See you next week.